into being a director of brand strategy for J. Walter Thomas Los Angeles. In 2004, I had my last job, West Wing, which is in Tampa, Florida. Senior Vice President, Director of Brand Strategy as a lead ad strategist for Publix grocery stores and Orlando Tourism and Visitor Bureau. And for the last 10 years, I have many times worked with independent business owners. I had created a product that was sold, Think 2 product I had. It was a PDF that we sold for $297. And if you leave me your name and email address, I can send you that PDF. That later got turned into a book published by Wiley, published in 2007. And the library here is going to have, I gifted them one, but it takes a few days or whatever to get it on the shelves. If you happen to buy this, you can buy it for a penny on Amazon. I prefer you buy a used copy. I don't make more money for the new ones. My preference is supporting local entrepreneurs. So if you buy a used one, it supports an entrepreneur someplace. And my preference is if you look at the ones that are least expensive, look at the geography. Because if you buy one that's in North Carolina, it takes less gas to get it here than buying one in Hawaii. And this is a used copy. And Chuck, I'd love you to have this. I'm grateful to Chuck and Chris for Yield Country Store providing snacks that are over here. Tim from Cool Cats and Ember have provided the fudge and the ice cream pie that's there. And the coffee is from Appalachian Java. So those are the goodies that we're enjoying. And now into the notes that you have on your page. These are fill in the blanks, and for each of the 4 teaching points that we're going to go over, I'm going to give you an answer or something that is what makes sense to me. So in this first one, branding is not a logo or a tagline, but an engineered result. To me, branding is all about results, engineering results. Many people have been talking about branding here in Burnsville in terms of the telescopes that are going to be built. And to me, that's an accessory. That's part of us getting the results that we want. It's not that we're putting up the telescopes in order to have that telescopes equal Burnsville. We're putting up the telescopes in order to help attract tourism, in order to help people know that the town center is here when they're driving by on the highway and things along those lines. It's a little bit like how the shirt that I'm wearing isn't Ben Mack. I can change shirts and yet I'm still Ben Mack. And companies and services change names and yet they continue to have brand equity in customers. So if we want to get technical, and then we're going to get into the tools, in terms of a brand, if you were to look it up in the dictionary, it often says a trademark or a distinctive name identifying a product or a manufacturer or a product line. And yet, I prefer the notion of that a brand is how likely somebody is to buy your named product or service. Your brand is your relationship. And so on the second part here where it says, I'm sorry, I had changed my notes. It used to be that the answer for the fill in the blank around brand was relationship, but I changed it as a result. Your brand is how likely somebody is to do business with you. And in branding, from my perspective, branding is stewarding that relationship. Branding is about what we do that either makes somebody likely to do business with you or repels somebody from doing business with you. And it's that relationship that is the brand. So it's nothing we can necessarily point to. Although in consumer research, we can ask a lot of questions and monitor how populations or how likely they are to do business with us or do business with somebody else. LOVEMARKS is a philosophy created by Kevin Roberts, and he wrote a book that I loaned to Tim that's back here, and the name of the book is called LOVEMARKS. And of all the different philosophies of branding that I've seen out there, this is my favorite. The notion is that every touch with your product or service should be an expression of love. So you can look at an ad that you're making. You can look at packaging and say, does this book feel like love? When you go into Yield Country Store and Chris or Sandy or Susanna, say hi, to me that feels like an expression of love. The handmade goods at Yield Country Store feel as though they're made with love to me. When at Burnsville and Ellipses, Burnsville Wine and Ellipses, have you noticed how Joyce has open and shut, and it's a hand-painted sign? To me, both that open and shut feels like love. It's hand-painted and it's a little cutesy and things along those lines. Now, it's sometimes easy to explain something by showing what isn't like that. So if you've got kids in high school, somebody might have tried to sell them on signing up for the Kaplan, for the SATs, the Kaplan prep thing. Now, when I took SATs, kids that had taken the Kaplan had T-shirts that said, if you didn't take Kaplan, you're not fully prepared. That's not really loving. Some of the kids that were taking the SATs with me were getting stressed out seeing these other kids in these shirts. I might have been a little punkish and snarky in my past. So that year I'd go up to the kids to the Kaplan thing and go, really, you took the Kaplan thing? Do you know how wrong their section on math was this year? Man, you're in for trouble. But it's a different approach, where the idea of LOVEMARKS is not that you are going to alienate those that aren't your customers, but that you try and reverberate love out there so that you're attractive both to your customers and your prospects. I left in my truck I buy Kleenex sometimes, and I bought the antiviral Kleenex, and I picked up the box, and on the bottom it says instructions for use. I don't know if you've ever read the instructions for use of the antiviral Kleenex, but it says use of this product other than as explicitly defined in the, I'm not getting this verbatim, is against federal law. And then it says, period, use only as a facial tissue. Like you can't wipe your neck or something happens, you run out of toilet paper. But that idea about the instructions for use, saying, by using this product incorrectly, you can be guilty of a felony, isn't exactly an expression of love in my mind, or the Kaplan one might be a better example. So the work that I do when I work with companies, small business owners on branding, I prefer the philosophy of the LOVEMARKS. That every touch that we have with a prospect and a customer feel like love, that it not be alienated, that it not be those elements. And to that end, while working with entrepreneurs, came up with something that we call glory story naming. And it's the idea about, whether it be your name or otherwise, in what ways might we make our customers the hero? For instance, I've been talking and working with Wendy Reed on the Design Gallery. When I talk to people in the community about the Design Gallery, they talk about the art and the artists that are at the Design Gallery as being what the Design Gallery makes heroic. And they are great. Well, but the artists that are featured and their work that is featured at the Design Gallery, they aren't the customers. And from my perspective in business and branding, what we want to do is make the customers, the patrons, the hero. So when somebody buys a painting at the Design Gallery and they put it up in their home and it helps brighten the kitchen room and helps the family have a brighter breakfast together, that's who's heroic. It's the husband or wife that has chosen, or person who has chosen to buy the art and has created a home environment by design. Buckminster Fuller talks about how the best way to predict the future is to design it. And part of what people are able to do at the Design Gallery is to be able to buy something that accentuates their home in such a way that it helps them have the experience they want, And that's the kind of experience that you can get in your home by starting at the design gallery. It's as simple as that. The design gallery helps you to design the experience you want in your own home. Now, sometimes I've been referred to as a rather crafty character, as a background in magic. And I just played with a little sleight of mind that I want to introduce you to. When I was talking about the design gallery, I was talking about what happens when you buy art at the design gallery. And I finished the little story by ending with the design gallery. One of the things I learned in consumer research is that people are most likely to remember the last thing they hear. And so if you can train yourself to end, as you're talking, to end with the name of your product or service, people are most likely to remember your named product or service if you can end a positive story with your exact name and then shut up. So that's the last thing that they hear. Then the sleight of mind part comes in with saying the phrase, "It's as simple as that." Because if you say something and then you're quiet and you say it's as simple as that, many minds will sub-vocalize, many minds will say in their own head the last thing they heard. So when I ended with the design gallery and I said, "It's as simple as that," and was quiet again, I'm willing to wager that at least a couple of the minds in this room repeated the phrase "the design gallery" in their head. That's just automatically what we do when we get tested. You know, it's like the design gallery. It's as simple as that. Oh, what was that I just heard? And then what did I say again? The design gallery. And the reason why I get this engineered about what I say, and the clients I work with at times, if they're going to do a radio interview and they want somebody to remember their domain name, oftentimes psychologists have said that it takes at least 3 times for somebody to hear something in order for them to remember it. 3 appearance bonding is the phrase created by Howard Bloom. And that's what we can get in less than 3 seconds there, is that 3 appearance bonding. So, when it comes to naming, whether we have an existing name or we're working on a new name, I focus on in what ways might we make our customer heroic. Because it's about our customers. They're the ones that are giving us money. And while the design gallery might certainly celebrate the great artists that it has curated in order to have in its space, the real hero to that artist, to Wendy and amongst others, is the person who's buying that art to change their space, to design their home to be more like what they want. What's the value in ending what you say with your name? It makes it so that people are more likely to remember your name. If you can find a way to end your stories with your name, then they are more likely to remember your name. And we talked about the verbal 3 appearance bonding and the value of saying it's as simple as that. So number 3 on this part, Lori's story is when you tell a story about your customers being heroic. Now the style of branding that I have taught is what some people call legendary, and it's not because my philosophy of branding has become that legendary out there, although I am amazed sometimes of who reaches out to me through email and says, "Hey, I heard something good," and it's like, "Awesome, you're huge," and thank you. But in storytelling, at UCLA I was a theater major, and to me, marketing and communications and branding is largely about storytelling. And there's one style of storytelling that's in many ways different than all the rest, in that legends are the one type of story that grows stronger with variations and as they grow older. Legends are the one type of story that grows stronger as they grow older. And if we think about the legend, for instance, of Paul Bunyan, and he's got Babe the Blue Ox. And in some stories with Paul Bunyan, Babe the Blue Ox gets killed one way, and in other stories, Babe the Blue Ox gets killed another way. And yet that doesn't invalidate the legend of Paul Bunyan. So what is it that makes a legend a legend? It's primarily the consistent elements. It's the characters, the common threads of the legend. So in terms of applying this to branding, I came up with something that I call the legend platform. And it's a form that has the glory story on it. Now, I'm going to tell a little bit about the kinds of glory stories that I've worked with clients. For instance, Mark Jamnick met me because we were living in Phoenix, and a mentor of his in marketing, Joe Polish, had invited me to speak at an event. And Mark had read Think 2 Products Ahead, and he wanted me to work with him on his consulting business. He makes most of his money as a trainer for Anthony Robbins. I don't know if you guys know who Anthony Robbins is, but he wanted to do his own training on the outside of Anthony Robbins. And I talked with Mark about who his most successful clients were, and asked him to tell about one client in particular who was a professor at Arizona State University, who had achieved many accolades within his academic career and was happily married, but was troubled enjoying himself until he met Mark Jamnick. And then in working with Mark Jamnick, he learned how to enjoy life daily. And I went, ding, 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 Mark, you've got something there. How do you help that professor? Was you help that professor be able to enjoy life daily. And so Mark Jamnick changed the name of his consulting company to EnjoyLifeDaily.com. And when I moved to Asheville, I was able to introduce him to Jack Carrier, who had founded DogTagArt.com. And Jack Carrier was working 60 hours a week in his business, when what he really wanted to do was go back to his sort of hippie youth and get in his VW van and drive around and have his business run on an autopilot. And so he worked with Mark Jamnick in terms of systematizing his business so his employees could report into him. Jack could go out on the road and be able to enjoy life daily. It's as simple as that. Mark Jamnick helped Jack Carrier be able to enjoy life daily. You hearing what I'm doing? On the radio these days, I hear ads for an elder care system that is called Home Instead. For people that know that their parents require more help than they're able to give them, that don't want to put their folks in some sort of elder age home. They prefer to have their parents stay at home instead. That's a great example of the glory story. What does that company do? It allows for us to have the senior people in our family be able to stay at their home instead of going into convalescent hospital or those kinds of things. But hopefully you're able to hear how this got a name that is heroic for the family that's able to have their elders be able to, as opposed to going to the convalescent home, be able to stay at home instead. And if you listen to their ads, you can hear them end sentences and paragraphs with that notion of home instead. And then when they get to the end, they say you can find us online at homeinstead.com, HOMEINSTEAD.com. So whatever your glory story is, I ask clients and those that are asking for my feed book that have read my book, and by the way, for everybody that put their name and email, I'll send you the PDF that we said sold for $297 that became this book from Wiley. But for everybody that lives in Burnsville, if you get a copy of this book or work through the PDF, at the end, and they're slightly different. There are differences between the PDF that we sold for $297 and the book. Believe it or not, the $22 book has better material than the $297 PDF. I got to work with some professional editors that helped me with forming, but every chapter here ends with some exercises. And wherever I've lived for the last 8 years, I've said that if somebody is near me and they're working through these materials, that if they've done the homework assignment, I'm open to meeting them and helping them with the homework assignment. My challenge many times in terms of helping people with branding or advertising is that they come to me wanting to talk to vocabulary that doesn't make sense to me. Where this gives the homework assignments that allow you to build a sustainable brand, something that can structurally be like a legend. Once you come up with what your glory story is, and your glory story might change slightly over time or depending on the product, but whatever your glory story is, I ask people to come up with 3 reasons to believe. Not 5, not 2, 3. On the library, when we come into the library here, if you notice on the desk, I wish I'd written it down, I meant to, but it talks about preserving the past. It gives 3 reasons, it gives 3 things that this library is about. And why do I like 3? It's not necessarily mystical, although there are many things that are 3. As a child, I had the great fortune of spending 3 days with Buckminster Fuller. And he talked about how 3 is the beginning of stability in the universe. Because 3 as a triangle will hold its own shape. Now, if you think about the 3 reasons to believe in the glory story, you might see it as 4 points, kind of like a square. But the square can't hold its own shape. In topological terms, this is statically indeterminate. It holds its own shape, and this isn't. But there's another way to create 4 points that will hold its shape. The tetrahedron. I happen to often think in topological terms. It's hard for me to make that easy for others to understand. Topology is the interconnectedness of points. But for me, your 3 reasons to believe are like the base triangle. And your glory story is what your 3 reasons to believe are pointing towards in terms of what's going to make your customer heroic. And if you're in a nonprofit or something, that should be pointing towards your mission. Now, when it's nonprofit, you have an explicit mission. When it's for-profit, you might not necessarily have an explicit mission. But I'm going to speculate in terms of Chuck and Chris, in terms of Ye Olde Country Store. The reason why they had Ye Olde Country Store is in order to provide a better way of life for them and their family. Now, in the process of providing a better way of life for him and his family, they happen to have many amazingly high-quality Amish products, foods that are made with the standards of the Amish manufacturers, as well as modern things along these lines. But for Chuck, his business is largely about improving his quality of life, where a library or other nonprofits have an explicit mission. Either way, we want to make sure that our 3 reasons to believe in our glory story are getting us towards our own mission. I put over here verbatim vitamins, and that's because I encourage consistency. Like with legends, where the characters being a common thread and consistent allow for the legend to grow stronger as it grows older. Verbatim vitamins are phrases that we say verbatim, and I call them vitamins because they're healthy for our prospects and customers to ingest, and they're healthy for our business. They're profitable for our business. for our customers and prospects to ingest. When I would travel the country and teach from the stage, one of the things around branding that I'd often say is that people know what they like because they like what they already know. We like things that we're already familiar with. And I'd say that phrase, people know what they like because they like what they already know, verbatim. Because students of mine, when they hear the exact same phrase, they go, oh, I get what Ben's saying, be consistent. Or leverage something that people already know. Where if I were to say that phrase, people know what they like because they like what they already know slightly differently, every time I said it, they'd have to go, do I know what we're talking about? And so it's like Chuck asked me the business question of if I thought he should change the name of, Princeton, he should change the name of Ye Olde Country Store to the Amish Store because that's what everybody already calls it. I said, I don't know. Great question. Happy to think about it. In marketing, it is often said that there is one always correct answer, and that's it's worth testing. But that's also if you're doing enough business with enough volume that you can split test stuff. And when you've got one store, you can't really. But either way, it's not such a huge deal with a retail location here in Burnsville. The love factor and the familiarity factor and things along those lines are more important than the exact phrase of what you call yourself out on the slide, in my opinion. We're almost to the questions part, but I want to talk about Warren Whitlock's The Rhesus Effect. Warren Whitlock is an IBM futurist. He is listed as one of the Forbes top 10 social media influencers, and I knew him before he was this famous, so he still takes my calls. And he is known for a lot of little quirky things. Each year on December 31st and January 1st, what trends on Twitter is hashtag happy in whatever the year is. And that first happened in 2009, when on December 31st, Warren Whitlock said, you know, people are saying Happy New Year's 2009. If we simply do the Happy 09 as a tweet, you just put that out as a shorter way to take two yummy things and put them together. Put out hashtag Happy 09, and within an hour somehow it spread virally, and Happy 09 was trending on Twitter. And I'm willing to wager that this year Happy 16 is going to trend on Twitter. It's one of those memes that caught on. But one of the things that Warren Whitlock has regularly told me is see if you can take two things that are already known and liked and bring them together. He calls it the Rhesus Effect because you've seen the commercials. You know, the chocolate and the peanut butter, you take two yummy things, take two good tasting things together and it's even more together. It reminds me of, oftentimes people think of synergy as 1 + 1 = 3. But on Facebook, I put up a post, my first post around branding in Burnsville, and me having heard people talking about the telescopes, and a lot of people being extraordinarily critical of the telescopes, and a lot of bogus data that we were going to spend $1.2 million on these two telescopes, which is just not the case. But people are saying, what do you think about branding Burnsville with telescopes? And I'm like, this is so not my language, I don't know how to respond to you. But I put up a post around branding that included the telescopes. And in that post, I talked about how, for me, branding is about the results that we're going to co-create together. Branding is about reverse engineering something. And how, to me, branding would be identifying the change that we want to create, figuring out what to measure, and then working on the tactics to help bring that through to fruition. And the telescopes were in the forefront of the conversation around branding. So I had a headline that brought up, and I can pull up the Facebook page if we want to back to see it. But I asked a question as a headline about branding Burnsville with the telescopes, ? And I had Googled around for the Dark Sky Park and things along those lines and found the article that I liked best. And so I took that link and I dropped it into my Facebook post. And I don't know how many of you might have noticed, but when you take a link and you put it in and it comes up with what's going to be. If you click on the words down there, it allows you to change them. So what I did was simply put Burnsville, North Carolina, ampersand, and then left the title the way it was, the first International Dark Sky Park in the Southeast. So I leveraged Warren Whitlock's teachings around the rhesus effect, because Burnsville has a big heart space in this region, and it was relevant to the material above. And from that, I was relatively pleased and surprised by later that evening it had been shared 500 times. By the next day, it had been shared 650 times. By 3 days later, it had been shared 950 times, and then it just lost it. I think as of this morning was at 965, and it's been that way for a few days. But that was leveraging the rhesus effect, seeing if there's some way that I can couple something that already appears as yummy with something else that we know is yummy. And so on the sheet it says the rhesus effect happens with co-branding, CO-branding. There's a fascinating book called Co-Branding that is all about quantitative numbers, so it's not an easy read for many, but it's on tests that's done with radio advertising and co-branding. And what they have often found is that the structure of co-branding is more important than the actual elements within it. So that so-and-so presents blank a blah, 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 or the way that I framed this structurally was Living Ring Intermediate Agency presents Branding 101 by Ben Mack. You many times don't even need to have something famous in order there, but if you have something famous that's already known or liked, that will help with your branding. So I believe this brings us to the Q&A part. I hope you've enjoyed and found value in what I've presented so far. Okay.
I have a couple of thoughts.
Please.
There's a piece of artwork that I've often wondered that I would like to tell a story about, and the reason that I bought it and the effect it's had on people that stay in our guest room, and so I linked that.
Great.
From what you said. And I was thinking about the country store because we recently, I worked as a volunteer transitioning the attendance of our new senior center to something that would be more inclusive of all ages, interracial. And one thing that we did, because we had to keep, the existing board wanted, of course, to keep senior center in ownership, but it was to begin to have something in addition to that on all the signage and all the logos, so you are testing that in a way, and then you get people begin to talk of it in that way. And I was thinking if you did want to transition, you could begin de-emphasizing the country store part and emphasizing the Amish part. So we love you guys. I think you're going to be fine, whatever. But in terms of the fall or touristry thing, they don't necessarily know you have the Amish father. So in that sense, those are not questions. Those are just a couple of things you spark.
I'm glad that I sparked some stuff. I can show a card trick that helps explain some of how I learned branding early on in terms of, to me, branding is about getting an irrationally high premium price for your goods and services, which means that you're more profitable. I'm sorry it's sad for you, and yet as a business owner, I want to be as profitable as...
No, I agree. It's bottom line.
To me, it's not sad at all. It is what I am good at. It might be sad for you, and I have done a lot of things in my life that some people find contentious. I helped popularize Power Rangers and had moms in Los Angeles protesting and saying, "You're making our kids fight in school." And I was selling toys, and I don't think that the toys I was selling was what was making kids fight in school. I think kids were fighting in school because they had a lot of anxiety and tension in their home and their environment, and they happen to externalize it sometimes with toys. I don't consider it at all sad that I have helped some moms who had always wanted to be stay-at-home moms to be able to have their family be able to more comfortably support that lifestyle than they ever had before. I don't consider that sad whatsoever. I don't consider it sad that I help people make more money than they imagined that they could otherwise.
That's not what I consider sad, but perhaps you could have a semantic. I think it's fine to next time.
Good deal.
It was just after your
Irrationally high premium prices.
Yes, it was the expression.
Yeah, when I was 19, I was able to get $1,000 magic shows. You don't get $1,000 magic shows simply because you can do a decent trick. I can do a decent card trick. Would you mind helping me with thank you. My name is Ben, your name is? Todd. Todd, would you grab out a playing card for me, please? No, pick me! No, I saw at the bottom of that. Very good. Show it around, I won't look. By the way, these cards were a donation from Ralph Hammond of Hammond Antique. Todd, call stop as I go through the pack. Stop. Throw your card back in there. Hopelessly losing your card towards the center of the pack. Can you shuffle?
Yeah.
Go for it. Shuffle them up if you will.
You know, it's really hopelessly a third one.
Fantastic. And you remember your playing card. It's important, otherwise I come to the end of the trick and I say, this is it, because I don't remember, whole thing looks silly. Place your hand palm up, if you will. Perfect. Your playing card is the Joker, correct?
It is not.
What was your card?
It's the Queen of Red Things.
Queen of Diamonds. Take a look. No. Applauding this loudly will disturb the people downstairs in the library. But you see, thank you. That card trick in and of itself would not have gotten me $1,000 as a 19-year-old. You know what I mean? I mean, I did that trick when I was 19. But it wasn't likely that just because I could do a card trick like that I would get $1,000. So, for instance, would you mind helping me with something?
All right.
And your name is? Lynn. Lynn, would you like to see the most amazing card trick you've ever seen in your entire life?
Sure.
Cool. Now, Lynn, you said sure kind of quickly. When I get to the end of this, I'm going to ask you, was this the most amazing card trick you've ever seen in your entire life, or was it not the most amazing card trick you've ever seen in your entire life? Will you be able to tell me?
Yes.
Fantastic. Now, some people feel obligated because of social pressures to say, yes, it was the most amazing card trick they've ever seen in their entire life, even if it wasn't the most amazing card trick you've ever seen in your entire life. Will you be able to be honest with me when you come to the end?
Yes.
Fantastic. It involves this invisible pack of playing cards. Can you see them?
Yes.
Oh, good. It's a regular size pack. I'm holding it by the side. Take the pack, if you will, and take them out of the box and shuffle them up on the table. Very good. And spread them face down across the table. Push one card forward. Pick it up, look at it. Now, it's not the Queen of Diamonds that Todd was just playing with, correct?
Right.
And it's not the Ace of Spades, the most commonly picked card in the pack.
Right.
But you can see it in your mind. You know what the card is.
Yes.
Show it to everyone else. I won't look. Don't tell them what it is. Just show it to them. And then place it face up amongst the face down cards. And shuffle the cards back together. Place the cards back in the box. So your card is the one card turned the wrong direction in the pack, correct? Take the entire pack, if you will, and throw it at me. As if that's not amazing enough. Lynn, what was the one card you turned the wrong direction in your pack? This will get real boring real fast.
8 of clubs.
The 8 of clubs, because the only card turned the wrong direction in this pack is this one playing card. Would you show her what it is?
Woohoo!
Now, the way I started getting $1,000 magic shows is that people would call me and they would say, Ben, I need to have you at my party. My friend Lynn won't shut up about how you showed her the most amazing card trick she's ever seen in her entire life. There's a huge difference in energy when somebody says, I need you at my party, versus somebody calling me and saying, are you available on such and such a date, or how much do you charge, blah, 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 blah. They're calling with this notion of, I need you at my party. And what was the glory story? The glory story is, if you hire me for your party, you get to have this performer who's going to show this card trick that people are going to say is the most amazing card trick they've ever seen in their entire life. Now, a lot of this stuff I picked up because my mom was a publicist. I don't know if you guys remember with General Hospital when Luke and Laura got married. My mom was the publicist, the very first publicist to get a soap opera on the cover of TV Guide. Something that at the time they said that could never be done because soap operas were the gutter of television. Now it seems as if every other week there's a soap opera on the cover. And so my mom said the gutter of television is an institution. There are these wonderful things. And somebody at TV Guide said, you know, there isn't a single academic study among soap operas. So what did my mom do? In Southern California, she worked with the University of Southern California to do an academic study on soap operas. And then 7 months later got Luke and Laura getting married on the cover of TV Guide. That to me is branding. That's reverse engineering. That's figuring out an agenda of what we want to get done, figuring out the path of how to get it done, the tactics, and connecting those dots. Other questions about what was... Yes, Wendy?
So, somehow I snoozed or something, but the LOVEMARKS are when communication with customers and prospects even.
Love. Or loved.
Okay.
Either way. Thank you. Yes.
I work with the Parkway Playhouse as a volunteer,
Awesome.
and so we're not trying to raise prices. We're trying to get more people in seats.
Sure.
So how is that similar to or different from the irrational prices for goods and services kind of product?
For many people, a $30 price point for a ticket is an irrationally high premium price. So now getting butts and seats, as is often, that's a technical term. Here in Burnsville, people are more sensitive to words than many other places where I've lived, and I got in trouble for saying butts. But in marketing, there's a technical term of butts and seats and heads and bets. These are technical phrases. My friend Molly, who lives out near off of Double Island, was talking about how she was thinking about the Parkway Playhouse as being a beautiful thing for folks in Asheville. It's a simple little day for drive across. When it comes to branding, part of it is figuring out the tactics that are going to get folks here. For a playhouse or other places, it's often much more about the play than it is about the brand of the Parkway Playhouse. Well, I worked for what's the primary nonprofit theater in Atlanta? Worked in the advertising for Atlanta Playhouse right by the museum, can't think of the name of it. We worked on a tagline that was the most powerful magic regularly scheduled in Atlanta. But nobody's going to that Atlanta Playhouse for their tagline. It's always about the plays that are there. It's a nice plus that it happens to be at that place or at the Parkway Playhouse. When it comes to figuring out for marketing a play, I go back to things along the learnings that I've gotten from Warren Whitlock with the rhesus effect and other things. When in 2004 I had my first online viral hit, I put up a website called What Would Bill Hicks Say? And Bill Hicks was a comedian who had died in 1994. His comedy was especially relevant in 2004 because of the election. He had been doing materially around that. And so one of my primary ways to get people into the conversation was using Twitter. So I would do a search on Twitter for Bill Hicks or Bill Hicks content, and then finding people already currently talking about that. I'd first compliment them on what they had said. If they replied back, then I would often invite them to take a look at what was BillHicksSay.com. But I started by searching for things that were relevant to what it was that I was promoting. And it was only a second or third beat that I would invite people to come look at what I was promoting. My first step was to go out there and compliment them on what they posted about Bill Hicks or something that was relevant. So for instance, you've got the Tusical Juniors, the Tusical musical that's coming up. One thing that I would be considering is within a 25 or 50 mile region of this is anybody that on Facebook that has a liking for Dr. Seuss in terms of advertising for them. I would look on Twitter in terms of, and Facebook in terms of searching for people talking about Dr. Seuss or Theodore Geisel. And where people are talking about Dr. Seuss or Theodore Geisel, I would first compliment them, and then if they continue talking, and then bring up the fact that we've got this wonderful play that's happening here in Burnsville at the Parkway Playhouse. But a tough thing about marketing a playhouse, the capital campaign would be different than marketing specific plays. But for the specific plays, it's going to be play specific. And trying to find the things that feel relevant to it. In terms of advertising for this, I've spent $3 a day for the last week advertising this just as an experiment to get my head back into how Facebook uses ads. Last time I promoted something on Facebook was about 4 years ago for Joost Vanderlei that was visiting Las Vegas, a neurolinguistic programming NLP practitioner. He's the #1 highest grossing NLP practitioner in the Netherlands. He was giving a seminar in Las Vegas, and I was able to, in Las Vegas, there were 1,200 people that had on Facebook said that they had an interest in NLP or some variation thereof, neurolinguistic programming. Back then, I was able to buy impressions for 50 cents per thousand. When I wanted to advertise for this and found that within a 25-mile radius, people that were interested in social media or marketing, which is broader than NLP in some ways, same audience, now Facebook would charge me $6.85 per thousand impressions. So that's 13 times as much. So something that was amazingly impactful 4 years ago is no longer, I can no longer imagine that would be cost effective.
And don't they just buy, I mean, they just pay people to do that, right?
I'm not sure.
To like it.
There are some that you can pay people to like it. There are other things that can get done. For me, everybody in this audience is in some, I don't know, Lynn, if we've ever met before, and I volunteered with you guys one night. We ushered together. This lady in the back, I know I've seen her face before, and I couldn't place where, and maybe I don't, maybe I'm not. These two in the back, I don't know if we've ever met before. Also, I'm an adult with autism. I've got Asperger's, and what's common with Asperger's is face blindness. So it often takes me seeing somebody 10 or 12 times in order for me to learn their faces. Did anybody in this room come specifically from a Facebook ad? I'm thinking not. Oh, you did? Oh, two of you. Oh, fantastic. So for $21, got two people in the room. Now, I'm not selling anything, and this is just for me a hobby and stuff along those lines. But $10 to get a button seat is expensive. Now, if it was 1/13 of that, then 80 cents, would be fairly worth it.
And I brought my husband to you.
Actually, we got three for them. But for instance, Chuck can't spend the math on it. Like Chuck would need to think, can I afford to, or Chris or whoever, I'm using you because you're in the room, can I spend $10 to get somebody to have lunch in Yale Country Store? Well, if the two of you, if you spent $10 in advertising and got the two of you to have lunch together, And the average, most sandwiches there are about $8, and a drink is about $10, so it's about $10 per person. If he can spend $10 and get someone to spend $10, I would tell Chuck to do it all day long. The reason is he's going to lose money on your first lunch there. But Chuck's more concerned with the lifetime value of a customer than he is about getting a return on that dollar investment in that first encounter. The direct response advertising is largely about can this be profitable right here and now? And traditionally, branding is about looking at the lifetime value of the customer. So getting someone from Asheville to come out to Burnsville and have a positive first-time experience, from my mind, if you've got seats that aren't selling, it's totally worth spending the money in advertising and getting that first thing because you've gotten them in trial. In marketing, we have what's called a purchase funnel. And in the PDF as well as in this book, I use the purchase funnel that is most commonly used in automobiles. Other companies have simpler ones, but going from the notion of need, aware, consider, interest, search, buy, use, prefer, and loyal. People don't know that they have a need to go to the theater. Although some people might, but most don't. But they know that they have a need to do something with their family. And Seussical, the musical, is appropriate for family entertainment. But it's tough to educate somebody. It's tough to say, hey, you've got family entertainment, you need to entertain your family, come consider us. For the Parkway Playhouse, it's a lot easier for people that are already play-going and things along those lines. But the notion of being aware that you exist. What does it take to get somebody to be aware that you exist? I lived in Nashville for over 2 years before I was aware Burnsville existed.
Yeah.
I wasn't searching for it. I didn't know I had a need. I'm thrilled that I live here now, but I was unaware of Burnsville. Then my friend Molly moved over to Double Island, and she started talking about how this has the highest artist per capita in the United States, and I was like, wow. I'm an artist. I dig this. This sounds great. And then interested. Well, I felt like I wanted to move away from Asheville. Burnsville seemed, so I came and I visited. Then I was like, hey, I really like how it's a lot more low-key than Asheville. I began to search for places that I could stay. It says buy on here. Well, signing a lease for rent is similar to buying. In a detention economy, I'm buying for a period of time. And now my preference is I've moved within Burnsville to someplace else. House up on a hill that is gorgeous, and the woman who owns it is down in Florida for the winter, and it's a luxury cabin, something that I probably would never otherwise be in if it wasn't a winter rental type of thing. Am I going to be loyal to Burnsville? Well, we'll see how things pan out. I need to be out of where I'm going to be by the end of March because she comes back on April. But that in this purchase funnel, that's the structure of the relationship. There are people that when they come through Asheville are going to stop at the design gallery, are going to stop at Yale Country Store because they have an affinity for it. They've tried it in the past, they've found something that they love, and now they've got a loyalty issue to put on. Long-winded answer.
How do you feel about bundling things? I would think, like, for instance, with the Parkway Playhouse and giving families a reason to come here from Asheville, and since you already have a partnership going anywhere in, if you had happy skills to stay overnight at a new Ray and they were going to serve you Ham for breakfast, and there was going to be photo opportunities, physical attachment. I don't know what it would look like, but how do you feel about those kinds of things working in a small town and how much advance?
I love that question. And it relates.
I'm glad. I'm kind of about to make amends here. We want you to stay first.
Well, thank you. People use the word brainstorm like the way that Kleenex gets used, in the sense of they'll use the word Kleenex for any patient tissue that's out there. And the word brainstorm was actually coined by a man named Alex Osborne, who is the O in BBDO, an ad agency I used to work at. And brainstorming is a very specific process of collaboration when it comes to best practices. And in both the PDF as well as this book, chapter 12 in the book on page 109 is Creativity on Demand. And it's about collaboration, it's about brainstorming. And so let's say that Parkway Playhouse is a working relationship with New Rayan, and I don't know the nuances of how you guys choose the exact part of the promotions and stuff along those lines. But for instance, when it comes to figuring out what one wants to do, it starts with figuring out a great question of what can we do in terms of X, Y, or Z. And then you ideate. Most people use the word brainstorm where I use the word ideate, which is you come up with a whole bunch of options. And then after you come up with options, you want a system of evaluation because you want to garner consensus. To me, one of the things that I've found is having a team that has solid consensus and agreement about what we're going to do is way more powerful than having what in other times has appeared as quote-unquote the best idea. Having a team that has consensus on what we should do. And so in this chapter, I talk about how group activities that can be used in order to build on ideas and have consensus on evaluating ideas. It's a process. I had the good fortune of working with the gentleman, Harry Vardas, who I referenced several times in this chapter. He helped set up the Center for Creativity at Kennesaw State University. And he teaches a 4.5-day MBA level course on applied creativity, which is around these brainstorming activities. I've had the honor of teaching with him at 5 different universities along these lines. To me, brainstorming is about the consensus and about integrating a team so that there's agreement on what's most important or what's most important for this team to do first. And the Osborne approach to brainstorming is about garnering the consensus. Well, any other questions or comments? Yes, we'll talk.
So you said brand is the relationship. Is how willing they are to do business with you?
Yes.
Is branding in that sense then a shorthand to the prospective buyer? I didn't quite understand what you meant by is the relationship.
To me, branding is a verb of stewarding that relationship with customers and prospects.
So,
and there's this relationship thing. We've got people show up for Parkway Playhouse. The play goes on. And people at some point choose to either buy tickets or choose not to buy tickets or aren't even aware that tickets are to be bought. The more people you can have aware of Parkway Playhouse and the current plays that are there, the larger your population of those considering to buy tickets. And among those that are aware, then getting them to take action. And so part of branding at times can be raising awareness, getting more people aware that Parkway Playhouse exists, and that within Parkway Playhouse we've got this exact play that's going on. And then another form of branding or marketing, but to me branding is about being profitable, allowing your institution, your entity to continue going forward.
So branding isn't a noun, it's a verb.
To me. One of the things that I didn't learn until 5 years ago, or 7 years ago, a branding lesson I would have loved to have known 20 years earlier in my career, is an idea that somebody put forward to me that there are only 3 ways to make more money. Get new customers, get existing customers to buy more often, or increase your average transaction price. So if branding is the process of stewarding making more money, one of the things that I regularly look at is, can we focus on one of those 3 things?
Do we want to focus on getting new customers? Do we want to focus on getting existing customers to buy again or buy more frequently? Or do we want to find a way to increase the average transaction price? Talking with Tim and Ember over at Cool Cats,